Yeah.
I just want to ask Eric. Hi, Eric. How are you
Daniel.
going to define supernatural? Like, what is the demarcation from natural?
Yeah, that's a
and
good question.
supernatural?
Like, that's a great question, and I don't really know because I know what the
I got
natural
a good
is.
definition.
I've got a good definition as well.
Yeah.
If you want one.
Let me finish my answer. Then you guys, let me finish my answer, and I can give you guys can give your definition. I'm not quite sure how I would define the supernatural other than not natural. It's the same way that if I were to believe in a supernatural, how would I define a super duper natural? Like, I'm not quite sure because it's like outside of my reality. So
Okay, if
I would
may
say a supernatural is something that is not natural. But go ahead, guys, if
If
you
I
want
can
to
help
put in your
myself
2
to
cents.
understand why you even brought it up,
Imaginary.
is do you sort of somehow infer supernatural to be beyond your senses? Like we can't directly perceive the supernatural.
I think
with our
I've probably got a
senses.
better
Did you mean that?
definition here
Did you
for
mean that
that,
when you
though.
use the word?
To answer Daniel's question, no, I don't equate the supernatural with what's beyond my senses. Like radio waves are beyond my senses, but I think those are natural. There are probably other forces of nature at play that are beyond my senses, but I don't consider supernatural. So no, I would not equate those two.
But but radio waves still are perceptible because we sort of use them
Not-
to communicate.
not by my
for
senses.
example.
No,
Not by senses.
not by
Like-
human biology.
Yeah, like tools. I can like humans have developed tools to detect those things. So if you want to say that the tools can detect them and those come within our realm of senses, I would still say no because there are things probably at play that we have no tools to detect.
Yeah.
Like let's say there's like quantum fields. Those are pretty much theoretical and we do a lot of math and stuff around them. But I'm not sure what tools we have to detect those. Maybe there are tools. I don't know. But it stands to reason that there are things about nature that we currently have no tools to detect and our senses do not detect. And I do not equate those to the supernatural.
So they might progressively become naturalized. Is that what you mean? Like progressively, as in when we sort of develop our capability to detect them, they become naturalized progressively. Is that what you mean?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm a methodological naturalist, so I think that what we currently have to work with is nothing but nature. There are things that we currently don't understand that are part of nature, and I don't discount the possibility of a supernature, but I don't have any reason to believe it's there. So
Yeah, I personally don't like the word
Go on, man.
supernatural. I don't use it. So I was just trying to be curious why you brought that
Sure.
up. And if the other person had an answer, a new UG, Zen monk,
I just think it's
had an answer.
I think it's a contextual term. It's a term that is applied in the context of a phenomena that we do not readily have a natural explanation for, or basically any explanation for, or we can't seem to explain it by how we understand things. So it's kind of like, but the minute we can explain it, the supernatural label is dropped. So like it's just like it's like a stopgap. It's a label that we throw on something that we don't understand that we quickly get rid of once we understand it. So like that's really all it's good for.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because the minute we can explain it mechanistically, it becomes part of the natural world, right?
Dale, I think my definition might even help you here. And in our school of thought, the definition of supernatural is what is outside of cause and effect. So if we can determine a cause for something, it is within the natural realm, because we can see that it is caused and there is an effect. This might be a determination we make on the particulars of reality, but if something is supernatural, it is outside the realm of cause and effect. So miracles, for example, would be supernatural.
But we do see an effect
we would-
for miracles.
definition
for
taken
example.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, we
mean,
can
if you
label
want to-
them. We can label them as miracles and being supernatural until we investigate them and find out that they are not. Yeah,
Unless they are.
Like even
well,
for the sake of the
they'd be
argument,
unknown. They'd be unknown. We'd have to assume that beyond that realm, we'd have to assume that realm is possible.
Mhm.
You know that's what that's what we're observing, and that there is some sort of there's some point of demarcation between our naturalistic experience of the phenomena and the supernatural ontology of what we are observing, which is weird.
Yeah.
So we would have to accept that as being the case to justify saying that, oh yeah, it's supernatural because we've eliminated all possible options. You see that gets really, really dicey, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just have a clarification for Zen Monk here. like some of the miracle claims that we still have in religions, we see the consequences of those miracles, like we see the effects. Like for example, the miracle, sea parting miracle. So sea parting miracle actually rescued Israelites across the sea. So there is an effect of this miracle, although we can't determine the cause of it, for example. So is miracle a bad example in your scheme of paradigm that you defined?
I don't think so, because I think it's probably a good example, because a miracle could be the creation of matter. So Jesus' creation of the fish and the bread. So that was creation ex nihilo, as far as we can tell in terms of the story. Jesus created the fish and the bread from nothing. So that had no cause other than the will of God,
But
which
we
is a
do see an
supernatural
effect,
being.
right?
We see the effect in the world,
Yeah.
otherwise we wouldn't know of the miracle. But the miracle we can determine from the worldview of the Christian is that was only caused by a supernatural power, being God. So if Jesus is God, God caused creation ex nihilo of the fish and the bread in that miracle. Same with the transformation of water into wine. There's no naturalistic explanation for that would not be miraculous.
I get
To
you.
create wine from water alone by your speech is not an effective cause to create wine. We would have to see, the usual process of making wine. Without that process, and it's just a determination of what's claimed to be a supernatural being, a miracle, then that is in itself a supernatural event, because it has no cause other than the will of a supernatural being.
So I just want to go back to JJ. I mean, he was making a point that I wanted to engage, but I seem to lose it from my brain. He did say something about a definition of supernatural. JL, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's up?
Can you please redefine it? Like what supernatural means to you?
So the way I've always looked at it is supernatural is a context dependent term, that it's a term that's invoked when the context is a phenomena that we cannot readily explain by naturalistic means or no naturalistic means. So if it's a thing that's like, we don't know, we have no idea how to explain how this is possible, supernatural is the label that gets slapped on it, in kind of like the interim. It's kind of like the label it's kind of like the label of dark matter or dark energy. That's not what we're going to call them. We've slapped them on those labels on them as kind of like a descriptor of an effect that we don't know the mechanism for. Okay. So supernatural is just what we label things as. But the moment, and we see this historically and contemporarily, the line of evidence is that the phenomenons that we can fully investigate, we reveal them to be naturalistic. That even things that are claimed to be extraordinary, like miracles, like I think one of the best ones was when the miracle of the flame at that one cathedral. I think it's in France or somewhere where the flame that lights. But anyway, that was found to be a completely naturalistic phenomenon. Even though for I think 100 years nobody could figure out how it was done. Turns out it was literally it was a trick. But it wasn't even that elaborate. It was just kind of like, you just don't see most of what's happening. It's behind the scenes. So that's the kicker, And
Gotcha.
Yeah, I see it as kind of like a throwaway label,
So going by that
we just don't use them often.
Going by that definition, we can never categorize God into being natural at all. Like in humanity, we have had so many years pass by, and we have never seen God to be synthesized into the fold of what can be called as natural, right? So he's always been supernatural. He's always been an inch away from being detected, so to speak. Correct? Would you agree?
I think that's one way you could define it. I don't agree that you defining it that way makes it true, but I mean, if you wanted to argue from that particular definition, you could. Sure, you could say that. I don't hold to a concrete definition of what a god is, so.
I was just trying to understand the word that you guys were using, supernatural, because what I see is like, for example, I'm a theist. Like I come from a belief perspective. So I see if this God exists, some of the things that he says to us and the promises he makes to us if they are fulfilled, we see the effect of those promises materialize in our world, right? But not necessarily figure out the mechanism of how he brings that to be, even though we ourselves become the mechanisms of fulfilling some of those predictions. For example, like we go back to Genesis, and God promises to Abraham that he's going to make his son Isaac into a great nation, and then he also promises Ishmael that he will make Ishmael into a great nation. We have seen those two promises materialize in historic events, and ourselves, people have become the channel of fulfilling those predictions made by God.
Well,
but
there's
still,
a slight problem there. There's a slight problem there, though.
yeah, sure.
By what mechanism could you differentiate them as being promises fulfilled by a god? I mean, assuming it exists aside, and not just people who believe it to be true, and then it turns them into self-fulfilling prophecies because people who want it to come true then work to make it come true.
Yeah, I totally get your point, but the Hebrews wrote those books, and for example, the Ishmaelites had nothing to do with some of the Hebrew writings, but the Hebrew writings of Ishmaelites coming and becoming a great nation really occurred in the 7th century, right? So the Ishmaelites were not involved in the Hebrew writings, but the prediction of them becoming a great nation was fulfilled in the 7th century. So how would you tackle that?
That the people who were, but okay, just because another group wasn't aware of it, that doesn't mean that nobody was aware of it. So there were other people that were aware of it. That's how it survived from when it was written to the point that the new nation was established. So the people who are aware of it and wanted it to happen, it is logically possible that they facilitated the outcome because they were aware that it was promised. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The minute I prophesize or predict something, and then if somebody else hears my prediction and then they want it to come true and then they facilitate it coming true, they have now eliminated it as being a prophecy. It now becomes self-fulfilling prophecy because the only reason they're doing it is because they got the information from me. It's no different than me saying, I would really like this to happen, and then someone saying, I can make that happen, and then they go and make it happen. I didn't prophesize anything. I just put information in the world and someone else did it. You know, and the fact that it took centuries for it to happen, that's just a transmission of information. One person says, this will happen one day, and then centuries later, the story keeps passing and passing and passing and passing and passing until eventually someone comes along, gets a hold of it, believes it, and has the capacity to make it happen, and then it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. We need to be able to eliminate that possibility before we say there's a God exists that promised it would happen, and therefore it happened. Because that requires the assumption that the God exists unless we can demonstrate that it does. So the most parsimonious is self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah. And Daniel, just kind of tack on what Jael just said there. Are you familiar with the channel Apologia?
No, not.
Okay. On his channel, he has a video that talks about what makes a prophecy a real prophecy, and he lays out like some criteria for what would like qualify something as a prophecy. And I think it's like 6 or 7 items. I got 6 here. Really quick though. Number 1, made clearly and demonstrably prior to the events predicted. Number 2, intended to be a prediction. Number 3, a non-mundane claim. 4, answered by a singular, clear, viable occurrence. 5, not open to interpretation. And 6, not something people are actively trying to fulfill. So, like, when we're talking about prophecy, especially in holy books and holy texts that from history that we have a hard time tracing, you know, when exactly these books were written and who wrote them and what they actually meant, we get a lot of problems in there. Because we can look at these holy books and we can go, okay, we can see how, yeah, okay, maybe this book does, you know, have a prophecy in it, or maybe this book was written after the fact. There's a lot of problems baked into, you know, dealing with these historical claims and then fitting them into our actual history. But if the claim is we have holy books that have prophecy in them, I would like to see a single one of those prophecies, any one of them, fulfill those criteria that I just listed out there. And I know it's you say you don't know Apology's channel, and you don't probably haven't heard this list before. Just look up Apology's channel, and he has a YouTube video called "What Prophecy is Real Prophecy." You can kind of go through that, and if you can find a prophecy that fulfills all those, you might be honest.
I totally agree with you. Like you did. I think you did a decent job in listing out those criteria. I totally agree with you. Those criteria should be. I would bank on it. I would incline on it. I actually, I'm for it. That any prophecy claim should go through those criteria. Should fulfill those criteria in order to be vetted, for example.
Yeah.
And I believe there are biblical prophecies which do qualify through those criteria. But having
can you
for example,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to concede that. Even though Ishmael did become a great nation in the span of over a span of hundreds of years, which in itself poses a challenge for people to work together to bring about its fulfillment because of the dynamic within humanities and all of that. Granted that it was something that people who wrote it became active agents in bringing that up. I would want to go to the next level of argumentation, where humans as agencies are not directly involved in making those predictions come true. For example, in the Qur'an talks about something called as the abyssal line of evidence, which really means that it separates what is imagination from what is real. I've studied the Quran for a long time, and I've come across this subject that God talks about in the Quran at quite a length, that how He created planet Earth and its skies. So He talks about creation of planet Earth to have 7 different functional skies. And after I studied this subject, I realized those sky layers was not an easy inference that people back then could pull up. Like if people had seen the sky back in those days, they would have realized, oh, there was just one sky. But for a scripture to make a prediction that there are 7 sky layers and each of those have functional roles, and we realize today there are like homosphere, ozone, ionosphere, plasmasphere, a magnetosphere, radiation belts, and the sky of gravity that's my research of the Quran, and I kind of see these sky layers as functionally paramount for the existence of planet Earth. And I go like, wow, this information, even if human beings predicted back then, which became only verified through modern observation, humans could not be the direct agents in bringing this to be realized or sort of organized, because humans just can't organize these sky layers, right? So would that be something that falls in the criteria where we can have a critical study on, for example?
Well, to be straightforward, I would say no. But because the layers of our atmosphere, sky layers, I'm imagining you're saying like layers of our atmosphere, it depends on how you break them up. The way we break up the layers of our atmosphere is really arbitrary based on certain criteria, what conditions there are, like what the pressure is, what elements are there. And science breaks up our atmosphere in different ways. We have a view to look at the layers of our atmosphere as 5 layers. There's 7 layers. You can look at it as 1 layer if you were really basic. Like, I don't see how saying that there are 7 sky layers coincides with a prophecy, because I could look at the atmosphere and I could devise a way to break it up into 20 layers if I wanted to. It just depends on the criteria I use to determine what a layer is. So 7, 5, 3, 1, whatever. I don't see how that would map to fulfilling a prophecy.
No, this is not a prophecy. This isn't a prophecy. This is
This correct me if I'm wrong here, this is the scientific miracle claim of the Quran, that the Quran made claims about the world as is that would not be known to the people of the time, would be impossible for them to know, and that it's proof of the divine revelation itself, because these people would have had no way of knowing that the sky had 7 layers, for example. But I think what Eric is saying is that, well, in order for the Quran scientific claims of miracle to be true, the Quran would have to be making scientific claims rather than claims about reality that are indeterminate. So if we were to look at this particular claim, when we see the cosmology of the time, there were lots of people discussing how the spheres of the sky worked, and they were thought to be crystal spheres that moved separately from one another, which would explain some of the motions of the bodies in heaven. So when you talk about the Quran saying that there are 7 layers of heaven, you would need to say that it was definitely talking about the troposphere, the ionosphere, etc., etc. And as Eric pointed out, the demarcation of different layers of the atmosphere is completely arbitrary. I could say there's only one atmosphere, or I could say that there are 50. You know, there's the top of the troposphere, the middle of the troposphere, the bottom of it. It's just completely arbitrary demarcation. So if the Quran wants to make these scientific claims, it would have to present them as if they were science, as if they were definite and explicit and clear.
Yeah, it does.
But if there are other claims, then
it's like if the Quran predicted there are three categories of weight, of body weight. There's underweight, normal, and overweight. But we have different ways of like demarcating, as Zen said, different categories. We could have massively underweight, slender, normal, slightly over normal, overweight, massively overweight, and obese. Like we can just demarcate completely arbitrarily and create 20 categories if we wanted to, or we can create 2 categories if we wanted to. Like
I totally
that's
get
the thing.
point.
Like yeah.
But
so like it, I guess just to wrap up, and I'll let you speak here in a second. When we see something in a holy book, or we see something in a text that we want to be a prophecy, or we want to be like some type of scientifically accurate statement, I guarantee you, no matter what it says, we can find some way to fit it into reality. But the question is was that statement in the holy book really generated by a god? Was it really generated by something beyond our reality? Or is it just their best guess at the time? And then believers today will look at that and go, oh, how can I fit this into reality as we know it? And then they find a way.
Yeah,
like that's the real question.
I get your point.
Yeah.
So one of the ways, I mean, I don't know how much you guys have read the Quran, but if you were to read the Quran, it really begins off in chapter 2 stating this as an inerrant revelation. So there is no errors in it. So it really basically put forward a claim to sort of find errors in it. So it starts with this premise, and then we can give that. We can imagine that people, even if people were putting this together, we can imagine after having made that claim, they have to be really critical in picking and selecting information that they're actually including in the scriptures, right? So because now they're being critical because they have put out a claim that it's inerrant, right? So from that point of view, it has a pretty consistent narrative as far as the sky layers of planet Earth goes. So it consistently put forwards and postulates it's got 7 functionally different layers. So these are not how we would go on to interpret based on temperature and pressure profiles of the atmosphere. It basically lists atmosphere, which is homosphere, as one single layer because it permits flight of birds, for example. So it goes on to explain each of these sky layers at a certain depth, and it consistently postulates there are 7 layers to planet Earth that have become functionally as a requirement for the fruition of this planet. So the argument that the Quran lays down to me sounds like it was very well calculated, and if I go and introspect it, for people to be doing that in 7th century becomes a close impossibility. So that's one premise that the scriptures do bring to the table on abyssal line of evidence. But going back to prophecies,
so let's attack that premise real fast so that you don't go and gish gallop, right? So
Taco, I'm sorry, Taco, before you go into that, I just want to like latch on to what Daniel just said here. So have you created any type of like document or spreadsheet to show these are the 7 layers described in the Quran or the Vedas? I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with Islam. The Quran or the Vedas, either the 7 layers, here are their attributes, and then here are the 7 layers that science shows, and here are their attributes. And have you actually like drawn a mapping between the 7 in the Quran and the 7 in science? Like, have you done that at all?
Yeah, I have done it. In fact, I did it as an outcome of many discussions that I've had here with the atheists. Like,
is that a
basically,
document you can share with any of us?
Yeah, that's a book on Amazon. Like, if you go on Amazon.com.
There's a book.
Yeah,
wow.
I wrote a book on it. Yeah. This book I
Specifically,
really wrote
specifically addressing the 7 layers as described in the Quran and the 7 layers that science describes.
Yeah, it's a book. Yeah.
What's it called?
It's called Ancient Astronomy, Allah's Narrative.
Ancient Astronomy,
Allah's Narrative.
Allah's Narrative?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just a quick Google search says that science describes 5 main layers in Earth's atmosphere. Let's see. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere.
All right, guys. While you're looking it up, I'm about to bounce out because I'm falling asleep, and I think my wife would like me to like at least get off the computer for a moment. So, UG, Eli, thanks for chatting. It was really, really good chat. I know I bring the thunder, and I know it's not always conducive to conversation sometimes, but it goes back. I try to keep it as informal as possible. So I appreciate you putting up with me. I need to take more tips from Eric and kind of emulate that, because that approach is more conducive. It's definitely more honey than vinegar, but
when you're just pounding into them, they just get defensive, JL.
They do. And
JL, there are multiple approaches, and everyone resonates with one of them. So like, I'm in no way superior to you. Just you're fine, dude. Yeah, you're good.
I think it's awesome, man. I think that if we in the debate sphere pretend like there isn't an element of this that isn't for entertainment, you'd be lying. And the thunder brings entertainment.
There's some performative.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
I promise on that. I promise I'll never ad hom, and I'll never be like, well, you're just retarded. I don't do that crap. But I know I get hot. I know I get heated. So, but I hope that we had a good conversation, good information traded forth. So appreciate it, guys. This has been great. I think I've been on here for like 4 fucking hours.
A long time, dude. Good job. That was fun.
I hope to talk to you again sometime, JL.
Absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your night. Take care, bud.
Have a good day.
See you, JL.
Have a good one, JL.
All right, Prophet Daniel, I just bought your book. So once we get it, I'll take a look at it, and I'll see if there's anything to kind of latch onto and talk about it. There.
Okay, so I'll give you.
Is this? You said this was your book you wrote, right?
Yeah. So I'll give you a short idea behind it. I'm a non-English. I come from a non-English background, right? English is not my language. I don't speak English. Even now, I don't speak English at home. This was I never imagined I would write a book in my life, let alone in English, all right? But when I came to Australia, I met with atheists who were pretty mad at God. Unlike atheists back in United States. Atheists in the United States are pretty decent people. But when I came here, it was an entirely different world, and people were really seriously angry with God. And I got into debates with them, and years went by, and they gave me a lot of books to read from Carl Sagan's, Richard Dawkins, and one of the finest books that I read was from Jerry A. Cohen's Why Evolution is True. That captured me. I literally read every word in that book, and once I finished that book, I knew a response to that book. But that became my second response. But my first response was this, that I wrote this book, Ancient Astronomy. And my language is not the best there, right? So you might have difficulty reading that. And I have made some errors in that book. Because I can tell you that because I'm editing that book right now. I'm improving the language on the book right now as we speak, right? So you might have some difficulty reading that book and ignore some of the historical errors that I've made in that book, but just read for the substance. The main substance is still there. It's intact. You can bite on it. You can latch on it. And,
yeah. Once I get it, I'll look it over. But I'm gonna specifically look for the 7 layers as described in the Quran
that's the first chapter
versus the 7 layers as described in science, and I want to see what that says. Because I'll be straightforward with you, right? So like I'm doubtful. Like I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in a God. I'm doubtful that this will hold water, but I'm willing to. I just bought your book, like I said. I will take a look and see how well it holds up. And I might have some criticisms or some notes.
Sure.
And if we ever connect up again, let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What's your email? I mean, can I have your email?
In terms of like the cosmology in the Quran, Allah said to throw stars at jinn who are trying to listen in to the conversations of heaven. Now, I presume that your apologetic for that would be that it's not a literal description of the world. Would that be the case?
Those are meteors, for example.
Yeah. But in the Quran, they're stated to be stars, aren't they?
No, the word najm is for stars. Najm is the word for stars. But it's just because people from our reference frame, we call those shooting objects as shooting stars. So that's how in popular culture that star word gets used. But the Quran does not use the word najm there.
Right. So it is literally different in the text.
Yeah.
Real quick, everybody. I don't need to make a big closing statement or anything, but I'm also going to sign off. It was awesome, Eric. You were great. Want to get to talk to you, Mr. UG, and all the best to you, to our gentleman that you're having a discussion with. And thank you, Taco, for letting me be on. I appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good one, man.
Yeah,
Take it easy.
Peace be with you, brother.
So,
And I mean it.
Brilliant had submitted a super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Brilliant. He said, Prophet Daniel, can you read the verse relating to the 7 heavens and each level?
You'll literally have to read it in a few different places. Okay, so I can read that for you. I mean, if you want me to read, I can read it from
so
here.
So the 7 layers of heavens, or the 7 layers of the atmosphere, are not like consolidated to like one section of the book. It's like spread out across the Quran. Okay, go ahead. You just like dinged my confidence just a little bit.
Okay.
In this, because it's like once you're saying, well, okay, we gotta look at like across the entire book, it's going to lower my confidence in it, because if I expect a book to be scientifically accurate about a topic, I expect it to talk about the topic, not like sprinkle the topic throughout multiple chapters of the entire volume or book.
Yeah.
But like I'm just kind of giving you like an insight into like how my brain works with that. Because if we go from like, okay, chapter 1, how the atmosphere works, versus we're going to go across multiple chapters and like cherry pick verses to talk about the atmosphere, you've now just like kind of lowered my confidence that this book's actually making any statements about the atmosphere, and it's just
but
post hoc rationalization by believers.
Yeah, I get your point. I mean, I can totally understand where you're coming from, but the concept itself is pretty tight knit. It's not like, as you can imagine, loosely stated. It doesn't really make a loose statement about it. For example, I will read a couple of verses which may give you a pretty good idea, right? So it says here, He has organized a well-balanced ecosystem on Earth for you, and then he directed his attention towards the design of the sky and intricately perfected them as 7 functional layers. His knowledge encompasses everything. For example, this is a small little passage that really packs the information and sort of emphasizes the importance of 7 distinct functional sky layers, for example, right?
So it mentions 7 there, but does it actually go into the 7 after that, or is it just?
Yeah, it does.
Hey, there's 7 layers.
But not immediately after that, but in different places.
Okay, what's the next place? Like, how many chapters or verses later does it talk about the first layer?
Okay, just bear with me. But yeah, just bear with me. Another important passage that I might read you is this.
Yeah, an important thing about the Quran, Eric, is that it wasn't revealed in sequence. So the ayahs were revealed separately over 23 years, and they were compiled later on.
Yeah, but isn't the Quran written by Muhammad, right? The Quran was revealed
No,
to
Muhammad didn't write the Quran. No, he revealed the Quran, the verses of the Quran,
Okay, but
to his followers, who memorized them and later wrote them down.
so Muhammad didn't actually write the Quran or had somebody
Muhammad was
transcribe the
illiterate.
Quran.
He couldn't read or write.
Okay, yeah. So he was told these insights, and then he told others to write this down.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure if he specifically told others to write it down, but they did write some of the verses down, and many of them were just remembered and written down at a later date.
Okay.
Yeah, you're correct. So another interesting passage is here.
But my question is though, I'm like, what's like? I'll ask again because I don't think I got an answer. But so the Quran lists like states like 7 layers of the atmosphere, 7 layers of the heavens. How much later does it describe the first layer?
It's a hard to tell thing. It does describe it overly clear though. It's not giving you a very faint impression of what these layers are. It's giving you a very solid impression of what these layers are. For example, here.
Sure, but I'm sorry. Like, how many chapters or verses or books later? Like, I'm asking a very like concrete question here.
Yeah, it's basically spread across the Quran, across the book.
Go ahead.
It is basically spread across. The information is actually spread out across the book. Right from chapter 2 up until, you can say, chapter 80, in the 80s.
Oof. Okay.
Right.
Because here's the thing. From my point of view, all right, if I'm writing a book and then I talk about like 7 elements of something or 7 layers of something, and then I don't immediately go into like listing them, but I will put them like multiple chapters ahead. That doesn't strike me as somebody explaining the 7 layers. That strikes me as somebody who sees a passage that talks about 7 layers, and then they will look at everything preceding that, and then find things that fit that description, and then say, "Oh, these are the 7 layers." Like, it's not well structured to me. I've never read it,
yeah,
so maybe there's something I'm not seeing. But like from what you're describing to me, this sounds like post hoc rationalization.
It's not really that. I can see where you're coming from, but again, you have to put yourself in 7th century to a people who are not really investigating these natural wonders. Like, they don't even have a clue. That it's not their interest. These are not people who are Sasanians or Roman Empire. These are Arabs. They don't have stakes in research, or they don't have.
So does that mean,
for example?
I see what you're saying there, but does that mean that the truth of the 7 layers of the atmosphere was hidden to them, and it's only revealed to people today?
Yeah, you can say so, because they were not the ones who were going and validating it. They're like, oh, okay, 7 layers of the earth. Okay, now we validate this information. They don't even care because they don't understand it, perhaps, right? So
sorry, Daniel. So again, this smacks to me of post hoc rationalization. So Allah transmitted the Quran to Muhammad through the angel, and then Muhammad transcribed this through like third parties to this book. Could Muhammad or could Allah have like transmitted this in a way that it was all consolidated together, and these people could have gotten the full understanding of the 7 layers of the atmosphere without science developing, without centuries passing before we can like discover this independently? Like, could Allah have like transmitted this accurately in a way that people could understand, that everybody could understand, without science?
I don't think certain things are possible that way, because
I'm sorry. So Allah could not have done something, is what you're saying?
That's why Allah was relying on providing miracles to people in the olden days. But with the Quran, He said no more miracles to Prophet Muhammad, for example. I know people talk about Prophet Muhammad splitting the moon in the sky, but that's just not in the Quran. The Quran does not advocate splitting the moon. It's an event that is going to happen on Judgment Day, that the moon will be struck, but that's not a miracle that really happened.
Sorry, Daniel, I'm not really talking about miracles here. We're not talking about miracles at all. I'm talking about like if the Quran is trying to transmit to us, trying to communicate to us an accurate scientific understanding of the atmosphere, why didn't it do so in a straightforward manner that all people, all the way back to what the 600s, 400s, whenever the Quran was written, like around that time, wasn't it transmitted, and why wasn't it written in a way that all people could understand, rather than, okay, the 1900s come around and then science develops and then we have an understanding of the atmosphere, then all of a sudden now the Quran is describing the atmosphere to us. Why wasn't it written in a way that it was just there the whole time?
Yeah, there are things besides this abyssal line of evidence, for example, for the Arabs to bite on, for example. The Quran talks about many historical references to the Arabic people to convince them into faith. So that's besides the point. So not every point in the Quran they were privy to sort of digest the information. That's understandable, because the Quran has a lot of subject matter ranging from history to all the way to science and even mathematics, for example. If you guys have come across the codification in the Quran of the number 19, for example. So there are things in the Quran that because the text itself is for the rest of the times until Judgment Day, so there's no more prophet that's going to come after Prophet Muhammad. So the Quran packs a lot of information to convince people in every day and age, for example.
Let me ask you this, Daniel. What's more effective at communicating scientific truth to readers? Like, let's get away from the atmosphere thing. Let's put that aside for a second. Let's talk about something like, I don't know, like atoms. Okay. Let's say there's a claim that the Quran describes atoms. What's more effective? A chapter in the Quran that says, here's an atom. This is the nucleus and the protons and the neutrons and the atomic weight, and the number of protons and neutrons determine what kind of element it is, and like lays it all out in one chapter. And this is what atomic theory is, basically. Take that, okay? So that's option one. Option two is, okay, over multiple chapters, 80 plus, 100 plus chapters, we have tidbits about what atoms are. And you have to wait until science discovers what atoms are, and then we can discover in the text that, oh, hey, this chapter or this verse talked about atoms, and this verse way over here talked about atoms, and then this verse way over here talked about atoms. That's option two. What's the more effective way of describing atoms to the reader? Option one, where it's just described plainly in one chapter, versus option two, where it's described abstractly, vaguely in multiple chapters, multiple verses over the entire book. Like, what's the more effective option?
And just before you answer, Daniel, one of the claims of the Quran, as you'll know, and perhaps Eric won't, is that it's mubin, it's clear, it's a clear explanation of all things. So its claim for itself is also that it is a clear explanation.
Gotcha.
So Eric would be the better explanation of the two.
Yeah, the most effective method would be in which the people are themselves familiar, right? So the Quran uses the language of the people, and the language of the people really stems from the understanding of the people, right? So if the people themselves did not understand atoms and subatomic particles, there would be no appetite for Quran to articulate that, even because that's not even found in the language of that people, for example. They would have no relation to it, no meaning to it.
Surely.
So it wouldn't be really an effective way to go on to describe the atomic theory for them, because they have not been familiar with it, for example. So therefore the Quran relies on providing information with which they are familiar, but also provides them with concepts for them to contemplate for the future of what the Quran is really wanting them to.
That's kind of right. That's kind of my point, though. Like, the Quran was ineffective at describing the layers of the atmosphere until science came along and was effective at describing the atmosphere. And my question is, why wait for science if it is a divinely revealed book from a God who could reveal whatever this God wants to the people, to the common man, why did it have to wait for science to come along and do the job for it rather than just doing it at the beginning?
In fact, it is doing a job in its own way, and the parameters are there in the book. But what we get to know from science is the science basically confirms the information found in the Quran. It's not that you need science to tell you information that's not found in the Quran, and you're trying to somehow link it all up. But the parameters are there in the Quran. The emphasis right there. The information is there. So the only thing that's happening right now is because of our advancements and information that's coming in front of us right now out of our inquiry, we can only go back and say, okay, God has talked about it. Previously, maybe we did not have the acumen to go and investigate it. It does need an investigation, and you can imagine most often what happens is these people, religious text remains within the paradigm of religious schools, and religious schools are really making theology more than any other thing with these religious books, basically. So
and that's why, and see here, like that's where my hang up is that the Quran was ineffective at communicating the layers of the atmosphere until science came along to do the job for the Quran. And from my point of view as a non-believer, okay, I have two options. One is the Quran actually described the atmosphere, or the Quran didn't describe the atmosphere, and then believers are retconning, post hoc rationalizing scriptures to fit the current scientific discoveries. And I ask myself, what's more plausible? Is it the Quran actually had some type of like hidden scientific knowledge that was only revealed until the 19th century? Or is it that believers today, you Daniel, are retroactively looking at the scriptures and going, okay, how can I fit this into scientific discovery? And when I look at the two options, I see the more plausible option as believers today are retconning or retroactively applying the Quran to scientific discoveries. Because to me, a God who wants to accurately and succinctly and effectively communicate scientific truths to us could do a better job than what the Bible did, than what the Torah did, than what the Quran did. A God whose goal is to communicate this to us accurately could do a way better job than this.
That would indeed be the case, Eric, if the Quran just mentioned there are multiple sky layers. But what the Quran does is it gives you a number to work with and makes the claim an objective claim. So it specifies a number, 7, so it's easier to now disprove it. If it just loosely stated there are multiple layers, then you could say it's an ad hoc, coming sort of interpretation trying to fit it all. But it's not the case. It defines itself in an objective manner, and it provides the number to be 7 to work around, and now it becomes easier to falsify it because it provides a number to work with.
Well, that kind of loops around back to what we were doing earlier, where like the ways we divide up the atmosphere is really arbitrary depending on like what criteria we set and such. Like, sure, you can find scientific documents that describe the atmosphere as 7 layers. I can find scientific documents that describe the atmosphere as 5 layers. So I'm sure we can describe it as 6 layers. We can describe it as 9 layers. We could describe it probably as 100 layers. Like that doesn't strike me as, okay, this is like divine revelation that is speaking about objective truth rather than, like I said, this post hoc rationalization. So that's where my hang up is. Is there anything more concrete that the Quran can like describe scientifically, like something that, like, does the Quran describe anything? Does the Quran describe any scientific truths well before the science describes it in like explicit terms?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I get your point. Something more concrete would be when the Quran talks about these sky layers of the planet. It goes on to say the moon is located within these sky layers. So that's something that cannot be loosely stated again. So when the Quran makes it a point that the moon is located within these sky layers, that's something to reckon with, right? So we know that the moon is located within the some of these sky layers, for example. You know, the magnetic sky, for example, covers or extends beyond the moon, and the plasma sphere extends beyond the moon. So
I'm sorry, say that again, because so say that one more time. What sky layer? What sky layer is the moon in?
the plasma sphere and the magnetosphere
Plasmosphere?
and the magnetosphere.
So I'm taking a look here. So the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Yeah.
What about
Okay.
the gravity sphere?
Yeah, absolutely.
You
That is
forgot
true.
the eighth one, right?
Yeah, it would appear
Because
that
there's
the moon,
5 layers to the atmosphere, then the
Yeah.
magnetosphere,
And-
and the what else?
The sky of gravity.
Plasmasphere?
And
Yeah,
the plas and
Oh
the
no,
plas-
the gravity isn't in the sky though. That's a different sphere.
the plasmasphere is not the atmosphere; it's part of the magnetosphere, which is a different thing.
So
Like Earth's magnetic fields is not the same as its atmospheric layers.
gotcha.
Yeah.
The Earth's
So we're
magnetic
kind of
field is an
conflating the
entirely
two things
different
here.
and separate sky layer, and this is each of these sky layers. They are like having an overlapped structure. The homosphere, which is where flight is permitted. Like for example, flight is possible up until 100 kilometers, where the Kármán line ends, and the structure of the sky layer thereon changes to plasma sphere, basically, where flight is not possible, right? So technically that sky layer which permits flight path is called as homosphere, because there's a homogeneous arrangement of particles, right? That's one sky, technically one sky.
I'm sorry. I just want to rewind here. You're saying permitted flight. Like, you understand we've sent probes out beyond Pluto, right? Like,
But
there's no
those are
permitted flight
rocket-powered.
layers. There's
rocket
just
power is
space.
different from flight path. Flight path requires a homogeneous ambience to, like, aerodynamics is only within the homosphere, and beyond homosphere, aerodynamics doesn't work. What you need is rocket dynamics, basically.
Okay, but still, like, within the plasmasphere, you said within the plasmasphere flight is allowed, right? Like
No,
aeroflight.
plasmasphere is a rarefied condition of gases where the gases do not permit flight, aerodynamics. But plasmasphere extends beyond homosphere, and it's pretty much, it encompasses moon within
Yeah.
it, for example.
Because the plasmasphere is about magnetic fields, while the homosphere is about atmospheric fields. So it's like kind of like an apples and oranges type thing.
So
So
basi-
kind of rewinding here. Like, can you list to me exactly what the 7 layers are?
okay, the homosphere where flight is possible, and then
Homosphere.
the plasmasphere, the
Hold
ozone
on.
layer.
I'm sorry. I just wanna like get this right here. The homosphere distance is between 50 and 85 kilometers above Earth, so 31 to 35 miles.
Yeah,
That's the first layer,
Yeah.
right? Okay, what's the second layer?
plasmasphere.
Plasmosphere. But this plasmosphere extends to 30,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Maybe
hold on,
much more
I'm writing this
beyond
down.
that.
I'm writing this
Beyond
down here because I want to see if this actually holds up to scrutiny. So the homosphere is 30 to 50,000, or I'm sorry, 30 to 50 kilometers. But the plasmosphere is to 30,000 kilometers.
No,
right?
no, it goes beyond that. 30,000 could be where the ionosphere is. Ionosphere.
So what's number 3? What's the third layer?
So there's homosphere, plasmasphere, and there's ionosphere, and
Ionosphere.
yeah, and ozone, and you have
hold on,
magnetic
hold on.
sky.
Hold on, I'm looking at the ionosphere. So ionosphere distance. I'm Googling this because I'm not a scientist. So,
Yeah.
So the ionosphere is only 500 to 400 miles above Earth.
Yeah.
So the ionosphere is actually lower than the plasmasphere, according to Google.
Plasmasphere, when I'm saying, plasmasphere basically covers for the entire plasma in the entirety of magnetic skyline, right?
So the ionosphere is actually also comprises partially of the plasmasphere.
That's correct. That's
so
correct.
these two layers are kind of the same.
Overlapping.
Like one is part of the other.
You can say they overlap.
They overlap, yeah. So you have one layer, and then another layer which encompasses that original layer. So there's only one layer. It's not two layers, it's one layer.
No, they are functionally different, Eric. They have different functions. Ionosphere has a different function, entirely different from plasmasphere, which has a completely different function from radiation belts.
So if I'm baking a cake, okay, and I have a 3-layer cake, all right, and in the middle of the second layer, I have some frosting, right? That frosting is within the second layer. I don't get to call that frosting a third layer because it is a part of the second layer.
But they have a different function, Eric. That
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the function. I'm looking at how you're labeling it, and if you're
specific
if you're describing 7 layers, but then you tell me, well, one of the layers is actually a part of a different layer, then you're actually describing 6 layers.
What I recommend is you go through the book that you just made a purchase of. It's just chapter 1.
Sure, I'm waiting for it to be delivered. What's the 4th layer? Let's ignore this problem. Who cares? Like, it's not a big deal.
But
let's go to the 4th layer.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, they're not neat sort of spheres sitting on top of each other.
Yeah, there's no like
the plasmasphere is kind of like being buffeted by the sun. So it's kind of like looking at smoke.
Yeah,
and someone's blowing on smoke and it waves off to the back.
Exactly, like in my cake example, like if you have a 3-layer cake, I can measure, okay, that first layer is 3 centimeters, that second layer is 4 centimeters, that third layer is 2 centimeters. Like I can delineate, like,
imagine if someone had punched your cake into the desk. That's kind of how these layers look.
Exactly.
If you look at them from above. So when you say that the moon is in one of these layers, when the moon orbits the Earth, it actually passes through these layers. So for only about a third of the time is the moon actually in the plasmasphere.
So I get your point. When the moon is on the day side, you're saying the sky is compressed because of the solar shock. The sky compresses, and on the night side, the sky expands and extends beyond the moon, for example. So that's when you see the moon is within these sky layers becomes an information that we can actually investigate.
Well, as the moon tracks around the Earth, it's a lunar month. So within that lunar month, for only a third of the time is it within one of these layers.
I completely understand your point, but the fact of the matter is, moons are, basically you sight the moon at night. I do understand that the moon shows up on the day side as well. I mean, there's no doubt about that, for example. But when it's pointed to the people that when you look at the moon is within the sky layers of the Earth is a valid information because at night side the moon does fall within the sky layers of the Earth.
If your definition of sky layers includes the plasmasphere, then yeah, I would concede to that. No problem.
What's the 4th layer? So just for the audience, for the sake of the audience, because obviously we're all tracking this perfectly accurately.
Yeah.
But for the sake of the audience, we have the homosphere, which is 30 to 50 miles above the Earth. Although that does raise the question, what's between mile 0 and mile 30 above the Earth? But that's okay. Let's not worry about those details. So homosphere is 30 to 50 miles above the Earth. The plasmasphere is 30,000 kilometers above the Earth. And then the ionosphere is 50 to 400 miles above the Earth. What's the 4th layer here, Daniel?
Yeah, okay. The way I'm jotting them out in my book is the fourth layer is ozone.
Ozone. Okay, ozone.
As a functional layer, yeah.
Okay, so ozone's a functional layer. So ozone layer elevation. I'm having Google back you up here. So the ozone layer is typically between 13 and 15 kilometers or 9 to 22 miles.
Yeah, it is within the homosphere.
Okay, so within the homosphere is correct, but if a layer is within a layer, it's just one layer,
No.
right?
These are functionally
Like
different
this
layers.
goes back.
They have
This goes back to my cake.
functionality.
I'm sorry. This goes back to my cake analogy. I have a 3-layer cake, and if one layer has a frosting through it, I'm going to call it a 3-layer cake. That frosting is a part of a layer, right?
So, I mean, look, the way that it is communicated based on functionality is what needs to be looked at. And I can get the point that you're trying to make, but in order to see evidence, I would take a conciliatory approach. I would steelman the position and go and investigate, and then be able to refute it rather than strawmanning it. You know what I mean?
I'm not trying to strawman you. I'm taking it in piece by piece.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking out loud
Yeah.
about what I'm seeing,
Yeah.
right? So like I said, if I was describing a cake, I could say first few centimeters, next few centimeters, next few centimeters, delineate layers. But you're going into, okay, this layer, then this layer, but now we're going to drop back down, and inside of this other layer we already described,
Yeah.
we have another layer,
Yeah.
and we're going to jump back up, and now there's another layer inside of another layer we
Yeah.
described. Again, this smacks of post hoc rationalization to me.
No, brother. It also depends on how I am actually listing them down, right? So the Quran does
I
not
guess
go and say,
maybe
this
I
is the first, that is the second, that is the third. The Quran does not list them like one after the other, right? For example.
But you studied all 7, right?
Yeah, the Quran does say it is
Okay.
7, but does not list.
Maybe
First comes
maybe
this,
I should
second
have
comes that, third comes that.
maybe I should have specified. I will go back and I will correct myself. Please list me 1 through 7, the layers, starting from the bottom layer to the top layer.
All of these essentially start at the bottom. Like all of these layers start at the bottom. Like each one
What's
of these, right?
What's the bottommost layer? What's the layer that is below all the other layers?
So you can say it's ozone, but it's really hanging out there in
Have
the
a good one, EG.
Okay, so ozone is the bottommost layer.
For example,
9 to 22 miles.
But the real
9
bottommost is homosphere, basically, because we fly kites, and in homosphere, basically. So basically, homosphere is the beginning layer, but goes beyond ozone and sort of encompasses. Ozone
Hold on,
within
I'm sorry.
itself.
Slow down. I'm a simpleton on this, and I'm learning it. So please slow it down. You said the ozone was the first layer, but now you're saying the homosphere is the first layer?
Yeah, because ozone is suspended at a certain height, but homosphere starts right from the ground.
According to Google, ozone's 9 to 22 miles above us.
Yeah.
So what's the zero? If ozone's the first layer, then
Homosphere,
we have
you
no
can say
layer
homosphere
between
is the
0 and
first
9?
layer, because it starts ground zero, homosphere.
Homosphere starts at ground zero. Okay.
Yeah.
But Google disagrees with you. Google says that it is 31 to 53 miles above us for the homosphere.
It reaches until there, up until Kármán line, you can say. Kármán line is where homosphere ends.
So you're breaking with science here because, like I said, 31 to 53 miles is what the homosphere is at. Like, what layer hits 0 elevation? Like, what layer? Like you and I right now, the air we're breathing, what layer is that?
Homosphere.
That's the homosphere.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna double check this here in Google.
Yeah, sure.
Homosphere elevation. Because you're saying Qur'an maps to science, and I'm gonna look up the scientific thing. This thing here says the homosphere or the mesosphere is 50 to 85 kilometers, or 31 to 53 miles above us. In fact, when I type in homosphere, Google's giving me mesosphere. So it sounds like homosphere is a made-up thing?
See, homosphere is a sphere where there is homogeneous distribution of particles, which permits.
Can you point to me a scientific article or a wiki or something that talks about the homosphere?
Okay.
I do need to go to bed soon too, so
it's
you know,
yeah.
Breakfast
I needed to go
tacos.
to bed a few hours ago, but
Your biological needs are of no concern to me, man. I'm sorry.
okay.
So Eric, a simple definition that pops up here is the homosphere is a lower part of Earth's atmosphere extending from the surface up to about 80 to 100 kilometers.
Okay, where'd you get that from?
Just Google. I'm just
Where's that from?
Googling what is homosphere. What is homosphere?
Okay, what is homosphere?
Yep.
I'm gonna do the same exact thing you're doing.
Yep.
Okay, I see a Wikipedia article on homosphere. All right. Homosphere is the atmosphere where the bulk gases are homogeneously mixed due to turbulent mixing and eddy diffusion. Blah blah blah. Where's I want to see like the elevation of it. Blah blah blah. I don't see anything in here about where it starts. Okay, it starts at the Earth's surface and extends to about 90 kilometers above us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change my list here then. Homosphere 0 to 90 kilometers. Sorry, I'm switching between miles and kilometers. It's like
Not a problem,
the results are showing things that I'm American.
Yeah,
and, you know, we use miles. But I understand like the metric system's obviously far superior. Okay, homosphere 0 to 90 kilometers. What's the next layer above that?
In my book, it's different because I listed them differently. But for you, because we are going through altitude, I would say it's ozone because ozone comes next.
Okay, so ozone is 9 to 22 miles. Let me translate that into metric because I'm pretty sure your ozone layer, our ozone layer, overlaps with your homosphere. 9 miles to kilometers. So 9 miles is about 15 kilometers, and that's well within the homosphere. And then 22 miles is going to be 35 kilometers. So the ozone layer is a part of the homosphere. So we're talking about the same layer then. Because you don't have like homosphere part 1. You don't have homosphere part 1, ozone homosphere part 2. It's just homosphere. It's one layer.
Absolutely. No, you have homosphere, and within it, embedded is the ozone layer, because ozone layer performs a separate function than homosphere.
I don't care about functions. I care about delineation, right?
No, the thing is, the Qur'an describes them as functionally separate layers. Functionally. Each one of these layers have got separate function.
What's the function of homosphere part 1 versus homosphere part 2 with ozone delineating it? Like, what's the two functions between these two ozone layers?
Okay, the ozone does
layers,
not split the homosphere necessarily. It doesn't split it.
According to the math, it does. The the ozone splits the homosphere right through the middle.
I get what you're saying, but it's just embedded within. It doesn't really split it. It is embedded within.
So, I would love to keep this going, but I know Taka needs to sleep. But Daniel, I want to say that the math isn't mathing here. And I've tried to like really take an honest attempt at this, but the math is not mathing.
Okay, for example, let me give you this idea, and so that you can get a better idea of what I'm saying. For example, the magnetic sky, the magnetic lines of flux of the Earth starts from ground zero. In fact, they start from within the core, right? Deep down the Earth. They start from there, and they go all the way up to thousands of radii Earth radii out into the outer space, right? So each of these separate sky layers, for example, homosphere, ozone, ionosphere, they don't necessarily chop out magnetic sky into bits and pieces. The concept is they are overlapping sky layers, right? The Quran also says that, though, by the way. There's a verse in the Quran which says he has made the design of these sky layers as an overlapped design. So they are overlapping each other.
So with the overlapping approach, then we don't have 7 distinct layers. We have less than 7 layers with some overlap involved.
Functionally,
okay, but
they function as 7 separate layers.
So we don't have, but here's the thing though. Okay, so the homosphere, all right, the homosphere performs a function, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the ozone layer performs a function, right?
Separate function, yeah.
Separate function. Okay, so we have a layer that's performing a function, and within that layer, there's another layer performing a function.
Absolutely.
But the super layer is performing the same function throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so how does this translate to 7 layers then? Like,
so you have
this
more layers.
This is what I'm failing to see.
Yeah.
Because I can arbitrarily pick out elevations and go, oh, this layer does this function, this layer does this function, and I could probably come up with less than 7 or way more than 7.
Okay, I understand. I'm also documenting that in my book. The way scientists describe is to study the weather pattern within homosphere. So they classify homosphere into sub layers of varying temperature and pressure profiles, right? So that's not even the Quranic premise. The Quranic premise is it treats the entirety of homosphere as just one sky layer because it performs one function, intended function, and that is to allow the flight path, for example, right?
The flight path, okay. Yeah. Well, I think we might have to end it there and resume it later because I think Taco wants to sleep and I'm tired.
Yeah, we can come back to this later, Daniel, but I still can't accept the Quran because it's much more likely that Muhammad was high as shit on shrooms and spoke to an angel. And so because of that verse that you cited a long time ago that I was trying to get to, that if there's one thing wrong in the Quran, the whole thing is false. And so because it's much more likely that Muhammad was on shrooms, we know the Quran is false. And I
would love to see the possibility of falsifying the Quran because I myself have been very critical in doing certain things in doing this research within the Quran. I would love the possibility of disproving the Quran, okay? Because I'm not a traditional Muslim as such. I don't rely on traditions. I'm a Quran only Muslim, for example, so I'm very critical of the Quran and I've studied the Quran quite a lot. I would love the possibility of seeing it refuted or an error being found.
What is your falsification criterion or criteria for the Quran? Like, do you have at least one? Like, basically, if I see X, then the Quran is false.
The abyssal line is what defines how we go on falsify, because the Quran makes a lot of claims, and any of those claims, if can be falsified upon evidence, that would be the falsification of the text.
So you're saying whatever falsifies the Quran, but I'm asking you for a specific. Like, let me give you a concrete example, okay? So I think evolution is an accurate description of what we see in nature. I think evolution is true. It happens. A falsification criterion for evolution would be if I find a rabbit in Precambrian rock, if I find a rabbit fossil in Precambrian rock, evolution is falsified. Evolution's false. That's one of my concrete criterions for evolution.
Gotcha.
Do you have something like that for the Quran? If I find X, the Quran is false.
I do. If the Quran was copied from the Bible, the Quran would say God created man first. So if you can cite in the Quran God created man first, which would mean that God created man and then created animals, That would be the falsification of the Quran.
So you could also figure out that Muhammad didn't speak to an angel, right? Would that falsify the Quran?
So what happens is there is claims that we can actually, that's where I'm coming from, I'm defining the abyssal
So if
line.
Muhammad didn't speak to an angel, hypothetically, the Quran would be false, right?
If you can disprove that, yes, it would be false.
Okay, so that's my point, is we know that Muhammad didn't speak to an angel because it's much more likely that Muhammad got high as shit on shrooms and spoke to an angel. In fact, you have 0 examples of angels collected in the Hijaz region of Saudi Arabia or the overarching Al-Taif governance. And so, because we know it's much more likely that Muhammad was high as shit on shrooms, we know that the Quran is false. We can even do a Bayesian analysis because there's 0 priors of angels and shrooms exist. It's 100%, but it's 100% that it was shrooms. And
Not
we can
for the
prove
information that he actually
Muhammad
brings to
took
the
shrooms.
table, such as this, the
The
abyssal line
Bayesian
evidence.
analysis.
I mean,
What?
if the abyssal line evidence was not there in the Quran, then your assertions could be worthy or have some weightage. But especially because of the abyssal line evidence found in the Quran, I kind of, cannot buy your argument as something valid. You know what I mean? If the abyssal line evidence did not exist,
Well,
in the
it's
Quran,
not an
then-
argument. It's
then-
just talking about likelihoods, right? It's much more likely that Muhammad was high as shit on shrooms and spoke to an angel. So we know the Quran is false. Because if that's more likely, then
So the way
very
really
likely
to
Muhammad
prove
didn't
or
speak
to
to an angel.
disprove is to tackle some of the claims that the Quran makes, which can actually be verified, and we can disprove it.
none of that would matter.
That would
It
be a
could have
likely
just
approach
been
to do it.
happens.
Rather
None of that
than-
matters. It could be happenstance. It could be knowledge they brought over from Rome, like the number of
Yeah, we can
bones in a
prove that.
foot
We can
or
prove mimesis.
something.
We can
So-
say, oh, the Arabs got this
So
information.
what
from
I'm
Greece.
saying is that even if it has some knowledge from other cultures and their culture, that does not matter. It's more likely that Muhammad was high as shit on shrooms and spoke to an angel.
I don't really understand why you keep repeating that statement because
Because if it's
we can
true, then
prove
the Quran is false.
So,
if we
so
can
maybe
prove-
Daniel, I can frame it in a way that you might see it from our point of view. So like Joseph Smith of Mormonism, right? Are you familiar with the story of Mormonism? How he had like these golden plates that were given to him from the angel Moroni. He put them in a hat and looked in the hat, and he translated them for somebody to transcribe. Like, are you familiar with that story at all? I know it sounds crazy, but that's actually what Mormonism is. Like, that's their history.
right.
Like, when you hear that, okay, Joseph Smith was a traveler from the East Coast to the West Coast. He had a following. He claimed he got these golden plates, which had like scriptural truth on them, and he put them in a hat and he read them from, like, he stuck his head in the hat, read them, and then somebody nearby transcribed them. Like, you have an evaluation to make there. When a Mormon brings you that claim, you have an evaluation to make. You can ask yourself, okay, did this actually happen? Or is there a more plausible explanation for this? I would wager, since you don't believe in Mormonism, you're going to bet your money, you're going to wager that there's some naturalistic explanation. He was a shyster, he was a con man, the story is false, it's a legend, all those things. Like,
Give them all shrooms.
or shrooms, yeah, he was fucking high. Like, you're gonna come to a bunch of naturalistic explanations before you accept the supernatural explanation. And that's for Mormonism. Take that feeling, bottle up that feeling, and what you're thinking about Mormonism, feel that. That's what we're feeling towards the claims of Islam. That's what we're feeling towards the claims of Christianity and everything else.
Gotcha. I totally understand that.
We're looking at the more plausible explanations
Absolutely.
of this, and that's
I
So
understand the premise
that's where we're
completely.
coming from.
Completely. I
ahead.
understand the premise completely. That's what I'm saying. If the Quran did not have these sort of claims that can be actually verified and validated, then the same premise would be equally valid as is valid on Mormonism, for example. Even the Bible has prophecies that have been really fulfilled, and the 6 criteria that you mentioned, they pass those criteria, by the way. Okay, especially the prophecy of Prophet Daniel passes all those 6 criterias. And maybe if you want, we can have a completely different stream only discussing how Daniel's prophecy passes those 6 criterias laid out by the
Sounds
apologetics
super boring.
of Quran. So I mean, these are the things that we have to be a little critical. I'm willing to be critical. I want to see how they can be falsified. So
It's simple. You would provide angels that are collected in the Hijaz region of Saudi Arabia.
There is no need to go to the
overarching
angels just yet, Tacos, because we have the substance we can lay our hands on, and we can see if it's getting dirtier. You know what I mean? So we can lay our hands. There is some information there, and we are being challenged. The Quran is challenging you to validate.
No, the Dalil is irrefutable. You're just rejecting the Dalil. Shrooms exist. Angels appear imaginary. You would have to provide some type of Dalil in support of angels.
And the Dalil is this: the abyssal line of evidence that the scripture brings.
No, you would have to provide angels.
So once you validate this, once you validate
my eyes
this
are going out.
information,
Yeah, Tacos, this is a chicken. Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
So yeah, I mean, at least I would want to see a steel-manned position being refuted badly. You know what I mean? Rather than straw-manned position being refuted easily.
Well, it's not a matter of it being refuted. It's a matter of it being substantiated by evidence.
That's correct.
And supported by that. And I don't. So far, I'll be honest with you, Daniel. So far, I don't see it. I see very loose.
Go through the chapter 1 and see how you.
I will when the book comes. I will when the book comes. But from my point of view now, I see a very convoluted, confused explanation of what the layers of the atmosphere are, whether they are actual layers delineated by like certain metrics like kilometers, or whether they're functions. Like, I don't see any type of sensical system here. I see, so far, like I said, I'm looking at plausibility.
Yeah.
Is this actually describing reality, or is this just a believer post hoc rationalizing what they've read in a holy book that they want to be true, and they're trying to fit it into our current understanding of reality? And from my point of view, my honest assessment is that it's the latter. It's post hoc rationalization.
I would agree with you if a more objective approach was not utilized in the Quran. Say, for example, listing them as 7 distinct. If it just said there are multiples, I would say it is post. How do you say that? Even I don't even know how to say that. Post hoc
rationalization.
Okay, post hoc rationalization.
It's when you have a conclusion.
Gotcha.
And then new evidence comes in, and instead of adjusting the conclusion to the evidence, you looked for a way to make the evidence fit your conclusion. Christians do it all the time. Jews do it all the time. Scientologists do it all the time. Lots of people do it all the time.
Gotcha.
So that's my point of view there.
I agree with you. But the Quran's approach is much more coherent, so that it lists actually them as 7 distinct. So it gives us something to disprove. It gives us something to refute, rather than just making a very generalized statement or claim.
Right. Okay, well...
So I do have to go to bed now, but I would think about the argument from Shrooms, and if you can provide studies of angels collected in the Hijaz region of Saudi Arabia or the overarching Al-Taif governance. And next stream, I would be happy to go back over the argument from Shrooms in full with you if I need to, and explain how it's likely. My personal hypothesis that Waraka killed Nate Muhammad in a love triangle with Kajita, and that's a fun one. I'd love to go over my personal hypothesis with you. But anyways, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out today. This was way longer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, you're
which is cool. Yeah, I was planning on doing like 3-4 hours.
Eric,
what's up?
If you want to get in touch with me after you read the book, you want to chat further, or you want to have a debate on it, I would love to discuss that with you after you read the book. So you can actually go to my channel, Prophet Daniel Has Spoken, and you can reach out to me via email there. And yeah, I would love to see what you think after you've read the chapter 1. Obviously, in the larger book, I'm making some basic errors, so you got to ignore that on in terms of history and everything. But yeah, as far as science goes, yeah, I would love to. I would love to hear you.
Well, it was a nice civil conversation, Daniel. I appreciated talking to you, and thank you, Tacos, for moderating, I guess. So yeah, fun time. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
thanks a lot.
I do run a
Tacos.
bunch of
Thanks a
formal
lot.
debates, so if you read that book and you're like, I absolutely have to address this, let me know, and we can definitely schedule a debate. But I doubt you're going to read that after this conversation and think that. But no offense to you, Daniel, just not
Not a problem.
impressed at all. But everybody, thank you so much for being here today. You guys are all awesome. Daniel, definitely rethink the argument from shrooms. Like I said, I'm happy to go over that with you later. Yeah, William, that's right. The more I say I want shorter streams, the longer they get. Yeah, they're approaching the relative speed of light. That's fair. All right, you guys all have a wonderful day, or morning,
You too, guys.
afternoon,
Have a good day.
night, whatever time it is for you, and we will see you tomorrow. Let me do my
Have a good day,
end scene
guys.
real fast.
Take
I
care.
got a cool end scene here. If it works, it should.
Get wrecked, nerd. Got fucking dominated, dude.
Absolutely dominated.